shit I've got over here, Beck. You look like I'm set up ready to film a porno. I'm going to be entering my first ever painting competition, the Squidmar Open. For the next 3 videos, you're going to be seeing me build, paint, and fuck up my entry. There's going to be tears, there's even a little bit blood, and some potentially war, crime level chemicals mixed up, but that's all part of the process. Sit back and enjoy. My name's George Fist, welcome in, grab yourself a cuppa or whatever else is you'd like to drink, and let's chat Warhammer. I ain't sipping that, I've freshly made it, it's absolutely boiling. The plan is to take a Saturnine Praetor 30k mini that came in the launch box of, I think, was it their 3rd edition or something? Very controversially, I don't like the Hellbrecht model, not a fan of the pose, come at us if you want. Whether it's an awful opinion or not, I'm using this Saturnine Praetor to proxy Hellbrecht. On the screen you are currently seeing the plan. There is a front on view and a side on view. My beautiful art, of course. I really wish I was good at doing anything digital. I use Canva for graphics. I can't be designing anything fancy for this. For this miniature, I want an imposing, impressive look, as if he's stepping up onto a rock, surveying the battlefield, looking down at maybe who he's just slain or who he's got to slay, as if he's sort of ready to challenge anyone. That sort of casual, I'm in control, but I'm also like hard as fuck stance. But in this video, we are focusing on the base, the actual rock and base that he is going to be stood on. Next video, we're going to look at the grots that you can see on the plan, and the video after, we are going to finally paint the actual Hellbrecht model. And hopefully by then I'll have the results, so I'll be able to tell you how I did. Let's crack on. To begin with, we need to make the main structure of the rock. For this, I'm using 1/4" cork. Grab mine off Amazon. You can grab yours from places like D6 Den. I'll pop a link in the description. Not affiliated, by the way. They are a kick. They just do some good stuff in the community. But the bits I'm using, I have just dug out of the remnants of my 1/4" cork from other projects. The 60mm base gives us ample room in order to make a rock and to leave the surrounding areas free for any sort of matching basing I want to do for my whole army, because this piece will also be a piece that I use to play in game. When selecting bits of cork, I'm looking for bits that I can stick together to match the shape I want to match on the plan. Also knowing that one of my grots needs like a little plateau, so I'm looking at what bit will fit in to sort of the overhang or fit in under the overhang in order for that grot to stand there. But we're also trying to find that uniformity while also not being uniform. As humans, we naturally look for patterns, we look for uniformity, probably be quite good for making something for a painting competition. But actually, if you look at nature, it's not always uniform, it's not always, if there's been a building knocked down like this is, there's some rubble and stuff, it's not going to fall uniformly. So it's also trying to find that little bit of randomness as well. For me personally, to work the cork into the shape I want, I find it easier to stick the bits down. So that's the first step. Stick the big bit on the bottom, and then the other half bit, that's going to be the overhang, stick that on top of the other bit of cork itself. I've also personally found that PVA glue works for me in this. I know I've seen people use super glue on other videos. I find the cork I've got at least just soaks the super glue up and doesn't actually become sticky. For you Americans, PVA glue is Elmer's glue. First time I saw that brand the other day, I was in B&M Bargains and I saw Elmer's. I didn't actually realize they make other things, I just thought that's what you call PVA glue. Now, in between each bit you're sticking down, give that plenty of time to dry. If you don't, it'll just slide around when it comes on the next steps, and that's really not what we want. So I needed to make the actual shape of the rock, and I had a really good idea. Rather than just carving it, let's get out my £5 Dremel I got from Boys. If you know, you know. Boys is the absolute boy of a shop. Unreal. If you've got one, stop in. It does everything. It does absolutely everything, including Warhammer actually. First up, I did spend a little bit of time ripping the sides of the cork just to try and sort of put it into the straight line of a shape that we needed before we took the Dremel to it. Remember, whenever you're using power tools, make sure that there is an adult present and they are watching you, making sure that you're not hurting yourself or injuring yourself, or if you're dremeling something, that you're not dremeling towards your own hands. Unfortunately, I don't have that adult, so I just have to do what I do, and then me wife is a nurse, so when I fuck it all up, she can fix things. Sometimes just being an idiot works. So I knew I wanted to turn this rock into like a ramp. That's what I did for the plan. So I took the Dremel and extremely carefully, dremeling towards my own hand, used the Dremel to sort of create that ramp, letting the Dremel's natural rotation sort of fight against us and bring it down, so we're slowly curved out a ramp. And you see all that cork dust coming off when you're dremeling? Do this in a well ventilated space, or make sure you've got a hoover running or you've got a mask on. Don't be like me, do it correctly. Also, maybe don't have a hoover running actually, because we're going to use that to join the joints. That's what I did, so you can keep it to the side, or try and keep it as I did, just to brush it into a pile onto your little work desk. Now we're going to use that cork dust in that amazing idea I had and make sure that we can cover up the actual cracks or the seams as to where the cork stuck together. Now locked in, I didn't want much texture, so I thought it'd be a really good idea to use super glue. I did initially try to put it on or pour it on, thinking, well, I don't want it to stick everything together or to stick the base to the table, so I used a cheap synthetic brush, not understanding chemical reactions. Right, it's making smoke. Oh, it's making smoke with this plastic thing. Oh, not the brush. Okay. This is bad chemicals in here to my eye.
Why did you flick it so far?
Yeah, don't use plastic brushes with super glue. I learned from putting it on Instagram and TikTok. Again, links in the description. It creates a thermal reaction, and even though it might not have been chemically reacting, maybe not, it does produce a lot of heat, hence why that brush was having a bit of a hard time and smoking. Really hurt my eyes as well. And then basically took the cap from another super glue that I knew wouldn't react, dipped it in, used that to drip it on. Just need to find an easier way of doing that, really. Get one of those long pipette things that I see people using that you can screw on the top. And as you can see, now it's dry, it also makes the joints look a lot clearer. And we're going to make them look even better a bit later on. Now, before we start to tie everything fully together, there is one more element that I want to and we need to add, and that is the actual rock that comes with the Praetor. I felt like, why waste it? We'll try and get it involved somewhere on this base. And looking at it, I thought it could be a really good tip to the ramp, make it look more like a rubble wall or something. So I started by cutting the bars that come in between the way that rock works is it's got a bit then like rebar in between the other bits, so I like cut that rebar off. And also the bottom bit was a little bit too long, so I trimmed that as well, just so it still went along with the correct angles of the base but just missed some of the side bit off. Then I stuck that to the cork using PVA glue. Because there's not plastic there, I didn't want to use anything like Tamiya thin cement and try and do a plastic weld. I just used, and I'd already scared myself off with the super glue, surprisingly, so I just used PVA glue to stick that down. Again, give that plenty of time to dry. Now we want to sort of tie everything together. So down the middle of the actual crack of the rock, I put some PVA glue, and wherever there was going to be like seams that would use the cork dust, put some PVA glue on there. And I took Army Painter Brown Battleground, which is like a little thin gravel, and I sprinkled that on there, and obviously leave that to dry for a while as well. I also took some of that brown battleground and sort of flipped the base on its head, and where the plastic met the cork, I put some PVA glue down, sprinkled some of that in there, again just to add this whole maybe to rubble sort of effect. And finally we needed to sort of tie the sides of the rock in. It doesn't quite look natural enough yet or rubbly enough yet, so I took some like cork bits I had from an Army Painter basing set, and I stuck them down because they were quite big and they looked a little bit like rocks, so along the sides. And then I went back to the brown battleground and stuck that then around those rocks. So we've got a big one in the middle, little bits down the side, and then even littler bits, just to again sort of give it that more natural tie it in all together look. It's now time to paint it as well. Fucking 15 minutes in. If you've ever done a kit bash before, you know that once we spray it, it starts to make a lot more sense. I started that with Colourforge Matte Black Primer, sprayed that all over. Because it's cork, it does soak it in a little bit, so you need a couple of layers of that one. Now it is starting to look a bit more gorgeous. Now it is all sprayed as well, it's sort of coming together. Now you also may think it tapers off a little bit disjointed, but we'll be coming back to that at the end. So those little rocks and the littler rocks will tie in together into the whole base, but we'll come back to that towards the end of the painting. So we're going to tackle what will be ice in the future. For that, I take some Citadel Corvax white and just paint that all over the bits that obviously aren't rocks, or maybe in between the rocks as well, where I know they may show through at the end of the paint job. And I find this grey white sets nicely up for ice, unless you are in Antarctic. Ice is usually not white. It will have some dirt, some greys, whatever in there. It's also the lowest point of the base, easier to paint that first and then come back and paint the rest. So now we're going to focus on the rocks, the most important bit at this stage. It starts with an all over coat Citadel Dawnstone. I absolutely love the way Games Workshop makes its rocks look, with a base and a wash and a highlight, so I'm going to stick with that. I even use very similar paints for that process. Once we've gone through 2 coats of that, we then look at Citadel Agrex Earthshade, and we paint that all over the rocks. This is like the second step in what Games Workshop do, and I think it does just sort of start to tie everything together when you are painting a rock. It gives it that sort of natural new look at a rock, even though it is 3D. The surface is pocked, it's stained, and that Agrex Earthshade really helps with that. We do need to add some tonal variation now. They're looking a little bit flat, so I take a dry brush, go back to the Citadel Dawnstone, and I dry brush that round the edges. So at this point, we're trying to go around the outside of the rock. We're not focusing on the center, we're doing the outside or where there is any joins if they go across the center. And we'll dry brush that with, again, Citadel Dawnstone. And to help get that greater variation in color, we then take Army Painter Sepia Tone, and wherever we've dry brushed, we paint that on those those rocks, on those cracks, wherever it is, and it'll just add that tonal variation of, it'll go over a little bit where the Agrax Earth shade is, and it'll sort of mix into a more browny, greeny tone there. It'll look sepia on top of the Dawnstone that's been dry brushed, and anywhere sort of in between, it'll add that just little bit more tonal variation. Just to be clear, we aren't putting that sepia tone on anywhere that hasn't been dry brushed, so anywhere that's just around the outsides, nothing on the centre. And anywhere it might not be blending very well, just take a wet brush. If you put too much sepia tone on, a clean wet brush, and sort of drag it on there, and it'll help to feather it out and blend it more into the Agrax Earth tone as well. Now it sort of makes the rocks again look a little bit flat because it's sort of removed the highlights. So we're going to go back in with the Citadel Dawnstone and the dry brush, and we're going to dry brush all over the rock now. Brings back a bit texture, brings back the highlights a little bit. Really nice step. But now the rocks sort of look beautiful. I'm not sure what else, to be fair, we could really do with them. Any tips on that, please put them in the comments. How can you make a rock look more professional in a paint job? One bit I did miss, there is a couple of bullets on there, and you can paint there. I painted them over just with some gold, washed them with a Citadel Nuln Oil, and then highlight them with that gold again. They're on there. I wanted to make sure they were painted, even though they're probably going to be covered by snow, to be honest with you. The final steps revolve around the finishing touches towards the end, when I'm obviously sticking the miniatures down. So I haven't got too much footage of this because I don't want to spoil everything. First, I needed to stick the grots down on the base. I needed to put some crackle paint and stuff on there, and this grot is going to be involved in all that, so he had to go down. Once he's stuck down and he's secure there, I take some Green Stuff World Winterfell crackle paint. This is a clear crackle paint, hence why we painted the white before, and put that all over where the ice is, or where it has been painted white, and a little bit onto the rocks as well. Once that dried, it has absolutely plenty of cracks, and which is what we want. We're going to finally, how I sell the ice effect, we take some UV resin, we'll mix it with some Vallejo Fluo Blue paint, and we mix them together. I personally do this on a plain card with a cocktail stick. Take that cocktail stick and we're putting it all over the crackle paint. Of course, then we use a UV torch to set that. If it's sunnier in the summer, I do recommend setting it with a UV torch, putting it out in the sun. Just cuts down massively on time and gets rid of the tackiness. But it's winter in Britain. We've had rain for about, well, literally almost every day 26. It ain't happening at the minute. And the final two steps is to mix AK snow paste and some army paint, just snow, like the texture, actual stuff. Mix them together and place that all over the base. Doing things like where the grot's dragging the ammo box. I wanted to make sure it looked like the snow was building up behind the ammo box. Building up in front of the ammo box, sorry. And then tapering out and like no snow behind the ammo box, as if it's building it up across the ice. You're now seeing B-roll of the completed base, or at least as much as I could show you without trying to spoil the whole thing. And I'm not going to show you the full model, don't be silly. Subscribe, like, and come back for the next one. Now, at the moment, I have no idea where I've come. It's been a couple of weeks since I finished painting it and submitted it. I've got no idea how long the judging's going to take. Squidmar get like 3,000 entries, so it's insane. Hopefully it'll come in the next couple of weeks. I'm filming the other videos, but thank you for watching. Like I say, make sure I come back for the next couple of videos, and let's continue to hobby together.